It's Monday morning, your alarm goes off, and before you've even had coffee, there it is, a meeting notification. 45 minutes, mandatory. And you already know nothing will be decided. You'll sit there while someone talks in circles, someone else checks their phone under the table, and the whole thing could have been an email. You close your eyes and think, surely this is a modern invention. Surely ancient humans running free across the savannah didn't have to deal with this. Here's the bad news. They did. The meeting is not a product of corporate culture or the industrial age. It is one of the oldest, most deeply human things that exists. Your ancestors were sitting in long, repetitive, occasionally pointless group discussions long before anyone invented the conference room. And the more scientists study how early humans actually organized their lives, the more familiar and honestly the more hilarious it all starts to look. Let's start with what ancient humans were actually doing all day, because the answer is not what most people expect. The popular image is relentless survival. Running, hunting, barely scraping by from one meal to the next. But in 1966, anthropologist Marshall Salins presented a landmark paper at a symposium on hunter-gatherers in Chicago, later expanded into his influential 1972 work Stone Age Economics. His argument was stunning. Hunter-gatherers, he proposed, were the original affluent society, not because they had a lot, but because they wanted little and had enough. Studies of the Kungsan, people of the Kalahari Desert, found that adults spent an average of just 3 to 5 hours per day on food-related work. The rest of the day was theirs. Rest, play, socializing, and yes, meetings. Because here's the thing about living in a group. Groups require decisions. Where do we move camp next? Who goes on the hunt tomorrow? What do we do about the man who took more than his share of the kill? None of these questions answer themselves. And in a world with no bosses, no government, no written laws, there was only one way to resolve them. You sat down together and you talked at length, in circles, until something resembling consensus emerged. If that sounds familiar, it should. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm of the University of Southern California spent decades studying decision-making in hunter-gatherer societies, publishing his findings in his 2011 book, Hierarchy in the Forest. What he found was that these groups were remarkably, almost aggressively egalitarian. Nobody got to simply declare a decision and walk away. Every significant choice had to go through the group. And the group always had opinions. All of them. At the same time. Boehm documented that discussions could stretch for hours, with the same points repeated, the same objections raised, the same arguments cycling back around again and again. Sound like any meeting you've ever been in? But here's where it gets interesting. Ancient meetings had something that modern ones desperately lack: consequences for the person who talked too much. Hunter-gatherer societies practiced what anthropologists call leveling mechanisms, deliberate communal strategies for cutting down anyone who got too big for their animal skins. If a hunter came back from a successful kill and started acting proud about it, the group wouldn't congratulate him, they would mock him. They would call the meat worthless. They would joke about how small it was, how lucky he got, how the animal practically fell over on its own. This wasn't cruelty, it was social technology. It kept individuals from accumulating too much status and disrupting the balance of the group. Anthropologist Richard Lee of the University of Toronto documented this practice extensively among the Kungsan in the 1960s and 70s, calling it insulting the meat. The explicit purpose was to prevent any single person from becoming dominant. In other words, ancient humans had a built-in system for shutting down the person in the meeting who simply will not stop talking. We lost that. We probably should get it back. And then there was the matter of conflict. Because group meetings weren't just about logistics. They were about people. And people, then as now, were deeply complicated. Anthropological records of modern hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Agta of the Philippines, the Batak of Malaysia, consistently show that interpersonal disputes were among the most frequent topics of group discussion. Who said what to whom? Who violated a social norm? Who wasn't pulling their weight? Who ate more than their share and then pretended they didn't? This is not so different from what happens when 6 people share an open-plan office and someone keeps stealing lunches from the communal fridge. The drama of human group living is ancient. The personalities are exactly the same, only the setting has changed. Now, here's where the humor sharpens into something real. Without a calendar, ancient humans had no concept of Monday. Every single day had equal potential to become a meeting day. A dispute could erupt on any morning. A decision about camp movement could demand a 2-hour group discussion on any afternoon. There was no saving it for the weekly check-in. There was no scheduling it for Thursday, so people had time to prepare. The meeting arrived when the meeting arrived. And you showed up because everyone showed up. Absence was not an option when your entire community numbered 25 people and everyone could see exactly where you were standing at all times. In a very real sense, ancient humans had it worse. Every day was Monday. And yet, even with all of this, the circular discussions, the repetitive debates, the inescapable social obligations of group life, there is strong evidence that ancient humans were not miserable. Quite the opposite. Measures of well-being among contemporary hunter-gatherer groups consistently show high levels of social connection, purpose, and meaning. Not because life was easy. It wasn't. But because every decision mattered directly. When you spend 3 hours debating where to move camp, you are not stuck in a pointless meeting. You are deciding where your children will sleep tonight. The stakes were real. The connection was real. The outcome belonged to everyone in the circle. The meeting, tedious as it was, actually meant something. That's what changed. Not the meeting itself. Not the human tendency to repeat the same point 4 different ways, or to raise an objection in the final 5 minutes when everyone is already mentally gone. Those things are ancient, permanent, written into our social DNA. What changed was the meaning underneath the meeting. Somewhere between the campfire and the conference room, the decisions stopped feeling like they belonged to us. The agenda was set by someone else. The outcome was often decided before anyone walked in. You became an attendee at your own life, and so you started dreading Monday. Not because meetings are new, but because somewhere along the way, they stopped being yours. So the next time you're sitting in a mandatory 45-minute meeting that could have been a 2-line email, take a moment. Your ancestors sat in longer ones with no chairs, no coffee, no exit strategy, no phone to check under the table, and at least the person who talked too much had their meat publicly insulted afterward. You are not suffering a uniquely modern inconvenience. You are participating in one of the oldest, most stubbornly human rituals on the planet. The meeting has always been tedious. The voices have always gone in circles. The difference is, for most of human history, it was at least followed by a fire, a shared meal, and someone telling a story that made the whole group forget how long the discussion had taken. That part we could probably bring back